Now, the DORSCON Orange announcement also sparked food and grocery buying sprees across Singapore over the weekend. Instant noodles, rice and toilet paper were among the top few items that appeared to be in high demand. Photos and videos of empty supermarket shelves and people purchasing large amounts of essentials flooded social media over the weekend. And this has led political leaders to speak out on these bouts of panic buying, including Prime Minister Lee Hsien Loong.
We have ample supplies. There's no need to stock up with instant noodles, or tin food, or toilet paper.
While supermarkets across the island have reassured customers that they are well stocked to deal with the surge, NTUC FairPrice has imposed a purchasing limit on paper products, rice and instant noodles. Customers will only be allowed to buy 4 packs of paper products, 2 bags of rice and 4 bundle packs of instant noodles at one time. The $50 limit for vegetables will also remain in place. Joining us in the studio to make sense of what has transpired over the weekend is Professor David Chan, Director of Behavioral Sciences Institute and Professor of Psychology at Singapore Management University. Welcome, Prof. Chan.
Hi, Dylan.
Now, Professor, what have you observed over the weekend? Is it an overreaction, do you think, to the DORSCON Orange announcement on Friday?
Well, first, what did we observe? I think it was certainly not a typical weekend. Well, you see on social media, if you're not at NTUC or at the cold storage and so on, with people running around with a trolley of items, empty shelves and so on. Whether it's an overreaction or not, I think it depends on which group we are talking about. I think the very first important thing to note that everybody you see at NTUC or other supermarkets on Friday evening, Friday afternoon, evening, and Saturday morning, don't demonize them first, because in that group, they are actually a heterogeneous group of different people. Mm-hmm. Well, first you have the typical group of after work, it's Friday, and you're already shopping there. So you could be caught right there in the middle of this huge avalanche of people coming in. And you're in the middle of a queue and you are buying things. Usually you don't just walk out, you carry on buying your things and then you join the queue, and then it kinds of, those are the existing crowd. Mm-hmm. And then you have the people who, of course, once you hear the news for whatever reasons, run there, buy the items, and then they add to the crowd. And the third group of people, and there's people who go there for actually, I would say, quite legitimate reasons. And we can talk about that. They have their own concerns. They may need to grab some supplies in the last minute. So it is a heterogeneous group.
Now, Professor, break it down for us. Let's just get straight into it. Why do people panic buy? What is the psychology, behind it?
Well, as I said, because it's a heterogeneous group, let's not look at the weekend shoppers on that particular weekend that just passed as panic buying. So panic buying would be a term that we will probably use to refer to a group of people who suddenly, upon some news, you run to the supermarkets and you start grabbing things which you don't really need. And when you grab things that you don't need, it is really more than that. As you grab 2 instant noodles, it becomes 3, it becomes 4. And then when you see there are 5 left, and you go on to grab 6 and so on. So it is the irrational behavior comes in, and then you call it panic buying, which is quite different from people who go there with some legitimate reasons. You maybe want to buy 2 instant noodles, 2 bundles of it, and then you notice that it is really quite short, and out of concern, you bought a 3rd one, and you're in the middle of a queue. So overreaction, yes, for the group of people who are hoarding, for the group of people who run there to buy things which you really don't need and you normally don't go, but not for the people who are caught in the middle of things and they were buying a little bit more. So let's distinguish the 2 groups at least.
Now, Professor, you mentioned a bit about, people who are stocking up on instant noodles. If we could just focus on that, stocking up on instant noodles and toilet paper, why these few particular items?
Well, I think there are 2 reasons. Frankly speaking, rice and instant noodles, because it's like essential food, we should ask our question, why instant noodles? Well, because it is durable, it kind of lasts. And so the mentality in most people is that I might have to stay at home for a long time. And once we understand the underlying psychology of why instant noodles, it kind of makes sense. Now, rice, we normally think about it as an essential item. But instant noodles is what, at least in Singapore, we tend to think that if I'm not going to go out for a long period of time, that's what I do. I cook the instant noodles. And the other thing is about canned food, but because canned food or tin food is kind of like heavy, you don't grab too many at a time. So that's the reasons for instant noodles, I would say. As to toilet paper, it's a little bit more mysterious. Most people grab toilet paper without knowing why they needed the toilet paper. Frankly speaking, I think the toilet paper was going off the shelves, and then people just grab it thinking that it's something that you really need and so on.
I mean, how does this, reaction in Singapore, compare to other countries which are also combating the coronavirus? I mean, like in Hong Kong, Hong Kong is, there were reports that in Hong Kong, people were starting to snatch face masks as early as in January. So why, how does this reaction in Singapore compare? It doesn't seem to be like a very unique kind of reaction.
Well, I think it's quite different, right? In the case of Hong Kong, there's a little bit to analyze when you're not part of Hong Kong, when you're not in there. But in Hong Kong, as we know, it has gone through months of a very difficult, very tough times due to the protests and so on. And in terms of the government, in terms of the communications, in terms of the relationship between the people and government is definitely much more challenging than in our case. Now, in our case, Singapore, what is unique is that although there were anxiety, there were some concerns, there was no running around, grabbing our items and so on. So what really happened and triggered that was the unpreparedness of the people in reaction to the raising of the DORSCON level from to orange. And the problem with the reaction part was that people didn't really understand what orange meant. It looks like it's getting more serious. And it also coincided with the fact that people were following the updates every day. And suddenly there was the local transmission and people began to worry and panic a little bit. And hence you see the underlying fear and anxiety is the same across countries, across groups, and within Singapore and across groups. However, the motivation behind is quite different. You have a group which I would call quite legitimate concerns, and that is this group who thinks that, well, I'm really not sure what is going on. I don't think I want to go out for the next 1 week, and so I need to stock up a little bit. And that, in some sense, is the group that you don't want to demonize, if you lack of a better word. But what we want to guard against is that group of people who don't really need and don't know why they are buying and start hoarding for really less than noble reasons. Because what happens is that you are depriving others of the items who may be more in need for that particular day. And the important thing to really note is that not only there are stockpiles, which is a fact, that is very easily verifiable. When the shelves are empty, it is not because it is really out of stock permanently. It is empty simply because you just got to wait for a few more hours or a day max, where the trucks are transporting items from the warehouse to different parts of the country in the different outlets. So of course the shelves will have to be empty because if you have so many people buying, it can't be possibly full all the time.
Right. Now, Professor, I think you touched on a very important point. Let's talk about the impact on the community. If this panic buying continues, who stands to lose the most?
Well, the obvious thing is don't let it continue, right? I think if it continues in a very irrational way, which I don't think it will, everybody stands to lose. In fact, I would argue that the person who hoards is the one who will lose most. And you may wonder, how can that be? You have more items, isn't it? Well, because if something really serious happens, your more item is not going to last you that long. And number two, if you start hoarding and behaving badly to everybody else around you, I'm not sure that in times of help, you'll be the one that people would like to help you first. So I think what is important is that when you say who will lose most, is everybody. And I think if we begin to be more resilient, begin to be able to take this anxiety and fear better, we actually will lose less and we will even gain. And frankly speaking, I don't think food and essential items is really of the issue. Even if you were to wait for weeks and months with lots of local transmission, Singapore has enough food to go around. If you decided that you run out of instant noodles, you can still eat something else because the food sources are really diversified.
Right. Well, thank you so much, Professor Chan, for coming into the studio and for sharing your insights with us. Of course, if you'd like to read more, you can always head on down to our website. It's straitstimes.com.